Greetings, everybody. Dave DeWalt here. I'm the founder and CEO of NightDragon. We're coming to you live from the RSA Cybersecurity Conference in San Francisco. Over 40,000 people here in San Francisco for this annual event. So fun to be here. Super excited. My 21st RSA Security Conference. It's amazing over the years watching this whole thing evolve. And we're having so much fun partnering with Nasdaq and what we call our NightVision series, where we get a chance to interview some of the titans in the cyber industry. This year, I have a special co-host partner, David Chen, who comes from Morgan Stanley and runs all of the investment banking technology side, global head for technology around Morgan Stanley, and a close friend of mine for 20-some years. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
And fun to partner with you in a different way.
You bet.
We do TV together now, the Dave and Dave Show.
Yeah. This was the Dave and Dave Show. Now it's Dave, 3 Daves here.
3 days. We got Dave.
Dave Cube, yeah.
Our special guest, David White from Comcast, who spent 26 years of his career, just hear this out, 26 years of his career at Sandia National Labs, securing nuclear weapons. And then moved to Comcast about 3 years ago or so to Philadelphia from Albuquerque. Mm-hmm. We're still converting him to be an Eagles fan because that's where I grew up, David. So all good there. Maybe spend a minute, just start for the audience. What's your role? Yeah. Maybe a little bit about Comcast and security engineering. I know the VP of all security engineering at Comcast. What does that entail? And a little bit about maybe products and how to protect the network for a sec.
Yeah. So again, have responsibility for security engineering, which includes most of our network, endpoint, email, almost every big data lake, almost everything end to end in terms of the security stack. And it's quite unique. Comcast takes an interesting approach where, the business is large enough that sometimes a lot of the commercial offerings don't quite scale to the size of our business. So sometimes we have to build things ourselves, right? And we've done that in a couple of different ways where we have internally built this massive security data fabric, right? It's just gobs and gobs of data streaming in from all of our different security tools and vectors. Right? And then we take that information and then we can apply machine learning, artificial intelligence, other things like that on top of it to stitch together these clues from a variety of sources. Well, that got so good, Comcast has now spun that out as a product called DataB, right? And then we also have inside my group, we're one of the largest consumers of a product called Blue Vector. It's one of those old Razor stories where you like the company so much you bought it. Well, that's Blue Vector is one of those cases, which is an endpoint or a network security solution, right? And so we have that installed all over Comcast network using machine learning to understand what's going on our network and apply advanced detection techniques to catch behaviors that the adversary is doing inside the network. And so we try to balance this whole schematic of things that we develop. And then, trust me, we buy a lot of products, security products too, and then things that we consume from the vendor side, weaving that together to form our basis for our defenses.
I find it so amazing. Just one sec, David. I find it so amazing that somebody who's protecting the network is also building products to be a provider to other companies as well. So congrats to all of that.
It's a tough challenge.
For sure.
But you mentioned you buy a lot of products, so that's going to be really interesting in terms of where we are in the industry. Every year at RSA, we stand up and we have debate. Is this the year where you go from, vendor, customers like yourselves, buying from small startup companies, with a cutting edge innovation, or do you prefer the safety of a big platform?
Great question.
Yeah.
And so where are we, in that debate? Where's Comcast?
Yeah, so Comcast is all over the map, right? There are definitely some places where we just buy from the biggest and baddest companies out there because we trust that and rely on that.
Yeah.
But then there are emerging spaces where we're just searching for new tools and new ways of doing things, and we're also consuming some of those, right? Because there are a lot of innovations that are happening and that are disrupting the market space. And so we are trying to take into that and using AI, for example, in code security and helping you rewrite it and helping you detect these things. That's an area that we're kind of jumping in a bit there too.
David, talk a little bit about last year was a pretty amazing year from a threat landscape point of view, and particularly also touching the telecommunication industry. China kind of showed up in a pretty bold and brazen way with Salt Typhoon. You're a defender. What Can you talk about that? And, just what's it like to be a defender, first of all, not just against all the criminals and activities like that, but also nation state actors as well now?
Yeah. Well, and again, I would say from my background, who's going after nuclear weapons data? It's going to be nation state actors, right? So from my background, that's where we are. I am used to that type of attention and activity. But really what we saw, I think, especially with Salt Typhoon, was a change in space that everyone was going after the server and the endpoint to where now everyone's going after the network.
The router.
The switches, things that you don't think. And you know what? We have a little bit of a wake-up call going on there. And I think our network security or our network tooling and our network providers, equipment providers, the big ones, Cisco, Juniper, all of those guys, have a wake-up call, right? Just like Microsoft did 2 decades ago, right? In terms of, hey, you can't sit and apply a patch and then let it sit there for 3 months while you see if there's any issues with that patch. You've got to install the patch today because there's an active exploit going against it. In the networking community, especially, trust me, the biggest thing we can do wrong is not connect people to those moments that matter in their lives. As an internet provider, that's our job. So if something goes down, be it from us screwing it up or a cyber attack, no one really cares. We just have to keep it up and running. So reliability is of paramount importance to us, but we saw nation states trying to get in via the network and going after these old vulnerabilities that are extremely difficult to patch. So there's got to be a sea change happening with our network providers and the way, for candidly, that we manage our networks, and all the telecom industry is working.
You say that. Love hearing you say that.
How does that change in the threat landscape influence your buying pattern? So what would be super interesting is just, there's probably 25 different categories in security. What bubbles at the top in terms of where you're spending?
Well, I think right now a lot of our focus is making sure on network compliance.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. It is making sure that we know the vulnerabilities, we know the systems, that rules of good security hygiene are enforced. No deprecated protocols are in use, right? The services that you're not using are turned off, right? Having visibility on the scale that Comcast is, we have over 30 million customers, and there's over 1 billion devices running on our network, right? So being able to have the visibility out into the network where we can see, is it patched, is it configured correctly? And that's where I'm not just speaking for Comcast. I know that's all of the telecom industry is interested in that visibility.
David, talk a little bit about, if you could for a minute, there was such a wake-up call last year, at least for me, having been CEO of McAfee and FireEye, and then waking up on July 18th to the CrowdStrike outage, kind of not to berate CrowdStrike, but we had one of the good guys create a pretty big outage. How are you thinking about, I guess, vendor resiliency, especially as you talked about the network and the inability to patch that? Are you looking deeper at supply chains, and how are you thinking about that area right now, resiliency of vendors?
Yeah, and that's an important one, right? And I know definitely especially in our network security space and in our networking, we have we don't go with a homogeneous solution, right? We have a lot of different vendors specifically for that. We're a big CrowdStrike shop, right? So we are a house that does that, and we had to have a lot of deep conversations with our CrowdStrike partner, and then we've done things in return from that where we know that maybe we can't trust it. So we have to have a lot more canaries out there, and we have to demand from our vendors that they allow us the cadence that we want to apply these fixes at. Right? We know we can't delay it a month. We know we can't delay it more than a day. Right? But we have to have some canaries get it before the main release. We have to have some canaries get it with the general, and then our really hardened environments can't get it till the end.
When you say canaries, you're talking about different segments of the network kind of thing, zones?
The old canary in the coal mine, right? That if the canary dies, there's no oxygen for the miners, right? So we got to have canaries out there running these pre-releases so that we know, hey, look, all your Windows systems are going to die. That would have been good to know before it was applied to all the systems, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, David White, part of the Dave and Dave show. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. And by the way, congratulations. It's a really unique talent to be able to defend networks and build products. I know you've done some great work. Thank you for your service as well all those years. Appreciate your partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yep.